Previously on a very special episode of the Boren Blitz, Zach Boren said he had zero concern about the roster management strategy, and it turns out he had good reason for that. Welcome to The Beat. It is presented by the Waterworks. He is Zach Boren. I am Austin Ward. Busy week since we last spoke, Zach. A lot of pickups, a ton of pickups, veterans, versatility, guys that you can plug in the starting lineup right away. It feels like you were onto something.
Ohio State and Mark Pantoni had a plan. They wanted to make sure that they were getting older. They wanted to make sure that they were bringing in guys who had meaningful snaps under their belts that could be contributors day one, and they went out and did that. The portal is a 14, 15-day cycle, right, when it's all said and done, and they were patient. They knew who their targets were, and they went out and got them. And I think if you're Ohio State, if you're at least a coach in that facility, you got to be really excited about where your roster is going into 26.
Yeah, and look, it's probably fair to say, well, that having a plan to acquire the talent, bring them in is one thing. I think they've executed that very well. Now, how's it going to play out once they arrive? We don't have to look back very far to know that sometimes portal swings don't hit once they actually get onto your campus. And, you know, we don't need to rehash some of the Ethan Onyanwa or Logan George stuff from a year ago. I think everybody that watches the Austin and Berm show is aware of who's hit and who hasn't for Ohio State. So that's only part of it. Like, there's a long way to go. Ohio State's going to get into winter workouts. They're going to get into mat drills. They're going to get into spring ball. We'll see if Terry Moore and Earl Little or Kyle Parker or anybody else that the Buckeyes picked up last week actually are able to follow through on what Mark Pantoni and his staff have seen on film. But in terms of getting through the first 2 weeks of January, it felt painful at times, but or at least from the outside looking in, but it definitely didn't seem to be the case inside the Woody, Zach.
Well, yeah, I mean, everyone wants instant gratification, right? The portal opens and they're expecting 15 signings of the top guys in the country. It's just not how it works. And obviously there's some schools out there that make big splashes early on. A lot of those schools are the programs that are tampering with guys throughout the year, that have an endless amount of cash flow. Programs reaching out to guys in the middle of the season and agents and things like that is a very real thing. These deals being constructed in October, November, even early December is a very real thing. In a lot of those schools, we're not going to name them, but a lot of those schools that you see early on in the leaderboard and the transfer portal are those schools that are doing it. Ohio State is methodical about their approach. They want to make sure that they're bringing in the right guys. If you have an agent or player who in October, November, December, when you're playing a very, very meaningful games, and these guys are out talking to other schools, trying to orchestrate deals just to either say, hey, you either match this or we're leaving. Like, you don't want those guys around the program. So there's a reason why Ohio State targeted who they did. There's a reason why Ohio State kind of knew which direction they wanted to go. They knew what guys were leaving. I've had multiple conversations with people inside the program, and 99.9% of the guys that were leaving in the portal from Ohio State, they knew they were leaving, right? Their conversations start happening early on in the transfer portal process. Actually, a lot of these happen in December with, the backups and things like that, when they start kind of figuring out the way their roster is going to look. So nothing happened from an Ohio State standpoint that shocked them, but then they started putting their game plan together. And I think it's a fantastic look. I don't know how you feel, Austin, but you bring in some veteran guys who, when healthy, jump off at the charts from a film standpoint. Some very underrated players. You already name dropped some. I even love the Welch kid from Northwestern. He's a tight end who is a great he can be a great receiving threat when he needs to be, but is a phenomenal blocker. Reminds me so much of Will Kazmarek, and I think Will Kazmarek might be one of the most underrated transfer portal signings Ohio State has ever had since the transfer portal opened. And Welch reminds me of a spitting image of Kazmarek. And so you start looking at guys like that, and I mean, awesome. We got a kicker, right? Everyone was freaking out when there was no kicker signed on day one. It was coming. They knew who they wanted. They knew the intentions from talking to the agent and things like that. And so, yeah, I mean, if you're Ohio State, you got to be ecstatic with where you're at.
It feels very weird for us to be having a Boren Blitz and talking about kickers. We just normally brush right past kicker and punter. But I mean, you look at this pickup from Baylor, it turns out that you're allowed to kick field goals longer than 50 yards, and sometimes you can make them. So, I mean, I don't have great analysis, Zach, for what it takes to be a good high-level kicker, but whoever evaluated that, and I think Gunnar Daniel has been doing a lot of that, just to give a shout-out behind the scenes, someone who's not on that full-time staff. I think he evaluated 7,000 kickers in the transfer portal on film to see who might pop and who they would go after. Looks like it's going to be a workable pickup. But again, it's like any other position. You still have to show up, do the work, and the pressure at Ohio State is obviously going to be different than Baylor. The attention that's going to be on you and the stakes and the games that he's going to play in. But, you know, it's just another position. Ohio State needed somebody in the portal, and they went out and got a relatively big name. Now, that is still a kicker, so relative to what, I don't know. But every spot that they had to fill, Zach, they've done.
They most definitely have. And I think they filled with great guys. And, you know, if you're Ohio State and you start looking at kind of, I'll call it the candy out there, right? The highly touted recruits that are in the portal that, you know, have all the intangibles and everyone thinks they're unbelievable. Sometimes those aren't the best guys for your roster. And what I love about what Ohio State did is the guys that they brought in, as I said when we started, have a ton of meaningful snaps. And you start looking at Ohio State's 2026 schedule, right? You go to Texas, you go to USC, right? You go to Indiana, you go to Iowa, to Nebraska, and then you've got Illinois, Oregon, and Michigan at home. Those are 5 massive matchups for Ohio State. Now, who knows what you're going to get out of Nebraska, but outside of that, those are all huge teams, and especially going on the road. And when you go on the road like that, you need some dudes that have a veteran presence to them, that have been there, that the spotlight's not too big for them. And that's what they wanted, right? They could have went out there and gotten the 25 recruit or the 24 recruit who, you know, 5-star or 4-star, but barely played, and you don't know what you're going to get outside of a recruiting ranking. Instead, they watched the film. They put hours upon hours upon hours about who they wanted to target and who was best for their team, and they did that. And I think that's what's going to show. You look at Indiana and what they did, right? No one was screaming last year about how great their portal class was. No one was saying, "Oh my God." I think they ranked like 47th or 48th in the country from that standpoint. No one was screaming about how great Fernando Mendoza was and was the best pickup there. But if you look at what they did, and now this year they brought in a lot of veteran guys who played a lot of football, and in those big games, those big moments, they've been there before, and they know how to react, know how to respond. And I think Ohio State's going a little bit to that approach, right? You might see high school recruiting go down the wayside a little bit with Ohio State. You might see these classes go from, you know, I know there's 28 this year. It might go down to 20 or less, and they just target some dudes who they think are going to be really, really good. And then the rest of their roster is building through the transfer portal with veteran guys who they've seen put tape right out the college level, who have played against good competition. Because so many times in high school, you don't even know what competition they're going against, right? Like we could give example after example. One of the biggest ones is Arch Manning, right? played against terrible competition in Louisiana, and it's taken him so many years to get to where he is. And I can guarantee you that people in Austin are hoping that he even takes a bigger step this year. And so Ohio State is starting to change their approach. They are one of the most forward-thinking programs in the country. And people are going to say, "Oh, that's bias and whatnot." The amount of time and the amount of minds sitting in that room trying to orchestrate their roster. It's not just Mark Pantoni. It's not just Ryan Day. There are so many people that are involved from this standpoint. And I think they are exceptional at it. There's no one better in my mindset. and we'll see, who steps up in 26.
Yeah. I mean, there's also no one better than the Waterworks. So as it gets colder, make sure your winter prep includes plumbing, drain, and furnace readiness. Call the Waterworks and Hetter Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing, your single source for home care services. They are standing by right now to take your call, 614-232-2222, or visit online at theirwaterworks.com. The other part of this roster building strategy, Zach, that has not changed is Ohio State's ability to reward its own veterans and keep them in the Woody. So you also had the Wednesday deadline to declare for the NFL draft. Kenyatta Jackson is back. Jermaine Matthews is back. Austin Sareveld is back. Carson Hinsman is back. Buckeyes would have loved to keep Caden McDonald. It wasn't going to be in the cards as his stock kept climbing and kept climbing. Obviously, we know Arvell Reese, Caleb Downs, Carnell Tate weren't coming back. And then, the one that could have gone either way, Max Clare, they didn't retain him. But those 5 guys in the middle of last week who decided to stick around, particularly on the offensive line, or I guess we can include Kenyatta in that, just working in the trenches out. I mean, those were big time pickups. Those are also veteran players. They know what it takes in the Woody. So from a culture standpoint, from a production standpoint, keeping those guys around was also just a massive priority.
Yeah, it's huge. And Ohio State spent so much money on retaining those guys. But again, those are guys that have a ton of snaps under their belt. They can play really, really good football. And so it's a huge win for Ohio State. Yeah, everyone wants to talk about the way the offensive line played the last 2 games of the year, right, against Indiana and Miami. But on the flip side, that offensive line moved some people in the regular season. And there were a lot of times during the year where people were talking about how great they were, right? Protecting Julian Sain. I think getting through the Michigan game, he was sacked once or twice all year, something like that, like some crazy stat. So retaining those guys is huge. And let's be honest, those guys are going to work this offseason. Coach Mick, Tyler Bowen, those guys are going to elevate those guys' games even more. And here's another thing, Austin, that people don't realize. For a lot of those guys that are coming back, there's no more year after this. So this is their NFL year. This is their money year, man. So when this is your last year of college, no matter what, and you have to go out there and perform because it's your money year from an NFL standpoint, a lot of times it gives you a little bit of an added bonus to go out there and be a dog on the field. And I think that's what you're going to see with this offensive line.
So when you look at this flurry of activity over the last week, Zach, and again, the work is only beginning. You said Mickey Marotti's going to get these guys in there. Already has now with school getting back into session to get through this stretch of winter workouts. What in your mind stands out as the biggest pickup, the highest priority? And is there anything that you feel like still could have been addressed differently or still out there?
Yeah, there are so many guys that I think Ohio State obviously is super excited to bring in. You start talking about Terry Moore. You start talking about Earl Little. And I think those guys on the back end, Ohio State is ecstatic about bringing in. We can talk about the Hayden Welch kid. I think Ohio State's ecstatic about bringing him in. In my mind, probably the best signing of them, and I might be completely wrong, but I'm just looking at purely upside. Kyle Parker, man, is a hell of a player. He's a guy who brings insane speed to this Ohio State wide receiving core. Obviously, with how many wideouts Ohio State lost, I think that's a guy that can just take the top off the defense. And when you package that with Jeremiah Smith, when so many defenses are going to play towards him, he could potentially have that Carnell Tate kind of year, right? Where we saw Carnell just take the top off of defense. And Kyle's probably faster than Carnell, right? And so, so from that standpoint, that's what I'm probably most excited for, to see him in this offense. If you're Ohio State, there's an embarrassment of riches that you're probably happy, they brought in. I think if you're Ohio State as well, looking at it, 2 positions that you may have wished you would have brought a little bit more in on was interior defensive line. I think, they thought they had Caden McDonald back, and he was coming back until each week went by after the season. And hey, it goes from, top 2 rounds to surefire first round to probably top 25 pick, right?
Right.
And once you start hearing that, you're like, Caden, I completely understand it. So I think if they could have brought another big time interior defensive linemen in. They would have loved to do that. And the other thing, the other position, which I actually think they're happy with it, but it's a little bit more of unprovenness, is corner, right? If they could have brought in a more proven corner, veteran guy, I think they would have been really happy with that. But on the flip side, man, the corners that they brought in have a really high ceiling. They think they can get a lot out of those dudes by coaching them, getting another year under their belt of college football, an off season, doing all those things. So those guys could be huge for Ohio State. But obviously, as I said, like anytime you can bring in a proven guy, it just kind of takes it a notch up.
Yeah, and those guys at corner, Cameron Calhoun from Cincinnati, he's had multiple stops. He went from Michigan to Utah to Alabama. A couple of years ago at Utah, I believe he had 9 pass breakups. So he's got versatility. He's got that veteran experience that we talk about a lot. The other, Dominic Kelly, a 4-star that Georgia was not very happy, got away. You can see a lot of the anger from their fan base and maybe even from their practice facility about what they're losing, someone that they thought could be a key contributor for the Bulldogs defense. And Kirby Smart put him on the field as a freshman a year ago. So that doesn't typically happen by accident. So, but those are depth pieces in some ways, because you have Jermaine Matthews back, you have Devin Sanchez on the rise, but you're trying to piece that together with, who's going to play in the nickel. Or a little seems like a good fit there, but could Cameron Calhoun fit, in that spot as well? I guess we'll see, but that's what spring camp and the summer is all for. You, however, have been down in South Florida, and I've got to know who's going to win and how miserable it's been to see Indiana and Miami fans over the last week.
Yeah, man, it's been tough down here in South Florida and Fort Lauderdale. Seeing all of the banners for the national championship game, seeing the Miami fans, seeing the news every night, and the way that they are just blowing it up. I mean, this is the last time they've been in the national championship since 2002, right? Like, it's been a long time for Miami.
Well, and Indiana, never,
right? It's tough. It's tough to say the least. I know I've been talking with you a little bit outside of the show, in the feeling of in my gut, just seeing those two fan bases frolicking around and having so much fun. I'm just like, this should be the Buckeyes, man. We should be doing a show down here. We should be getting ready for the game. It's a gun punch. I think every Buckeye fan felt it on New Year's Eve. And I think it's one of those things that people are going to feel it until that game ends Monday night and Tuesday comes around. And guess what? The new season's here, right? It's hard not to go with Indiana in this game. It's really hard not to. The way that they have played at the end of the season, the way Kurt Signetti has this veteran group playing together. They play fast. They play hard. But here's the thing, Austin. When you play a defensive line like Miami, anything can happen, man. And Miami's defensive line is nasty. I mean, absolutely nasty. Jason Taylor has those guys playing at an elite level. If Indiana can get by with calming Indiana's defense line, I think you have to do that with up tempo, keep them on their heels, screen them, do certain things. I think Indiana wins this football game. That would make 3 for the Big Ten, Austin. I'm not sure what people down south in the SEC country would be saying if Big Ten wins 3 national championships in a row, because I'm pretty sure at the beginning of this season, there was a person by the name of Paul Feinbaum that said if the SEC didn't win the national championship this year, there would be a shift in college football. And I don't think anyone's called him out on that comment yet this offseason, because there will for sure not be an SEC team winning the national championship.
Well, yeah, you have to actually play for it to win it, and that is yet another year where that is not going to happen. I think Paul Feinbaum might be a little bit late to that party, because the shift north to the Big Ten seems like that's already been going on for a couple of years. But maybe he'll wise up to that at some point. I doubt it. He'll keep banging the drum for the SEC, and the Big Ten will probably keep winning big games.
100%. I am going to disagree with the Big Ten on one thing. Tony Petitti has been outspoken about taking the college football playoff to 24 teams. And I know they meet this week, I believe, right? They meet this week to discuss the CFP for 26 and beyond. And all the talk is about a 16-team format. I think that is the best for college football. I think that's best for this format. I think from that standpoint, you take the first round buys out of the equation. Top 8 seeds get a home football game. Then from there, you go and you play your quarterfinals, right? Which then keeps the bowl games in play. I think that is the best. When you expand this to 24, let's be honest. If you expand it to 24, I say 8, but at least 6 don't belong in the CFP, right? Like it's just, come on. Once you get below, even this year, there was all the discussion around top 12, and outside of Vandy, Texas, Notre Dame, like who really deserved to get in? So that only gets you to 15 teams. Outside of that, no. So 16, I think, is more than enough. If you do what you're supposed to do during the regular season, top 16 should get you in. So it'll be interesting to see the give and take that obviously the SEC and Big Ten have, because Tony has said, I'll agree to 16 if we agree to 24 the year after. I am siding with the SEC on this. Needs to stay at 16, keep it at 16. If you want to get rid, Tony, if you want to get rid of conference championship games and call the first week after the college football or the end of the regular season is a playoff to get into the top 16 for however many schools, right? Whatever you want to call it. I'm okay with that, but you can't make it 24, man. You just can't.
No, it's horrible. And you heard it here first from Commissioner Zach Boren. That is, he has signed off on 16. Don't go any more than that, college football. All right. That's it. Zach has spoken, and he has had a lot of other thoughts on Ohio State's roster construction. And I appreciate his insight as always on a Boren Blitz on a Monday on the beat, presented by the Waterworks. Zach, travel safe. We'll see you back here in the great state of Ohio soon. For Zach, I'm Austin Ward. We'll talk to y'all later.